that Elizabeth, Princess Elizabeth at the time, would one day be the Queen. She, I think, has taken that role very, very seriously over her lifetime and kind of seen her personality as being secondary, that it's the institution that is all important. That has grated with, I think, some people in the family. It's grated sometimes with her children, who wanted at times to do their own thing, lead their own lives, but couldn't because of the burdens that are placed on them by this institution of monarchy. The Queen publicly never felt that way. She always was a kind of cipher, I suppose, for the stability, for the representation, for the symbol of the United Kingdom, and that is what she was right up until her death.
Rory, what happens now? What's the kind of protocol?
Well, it's all written. It's all written in meticulous detail. It's called Operation London Bridge, and there will be over the next 10 days. I think it's 10 days of state mourning, and then the funeral will take place on the 10th day. Prince Charles is now officially the king. I think he takes that over that position immediately, but it might well be some weeks or months until his actual coronation. But the Queen's body, I think, at some point soon will be brought down to London. There is an operation called Operation Unicorn, which is the plan for doing that. Now, it might be that she comes down by royal train, or it might be that she's flown by plane either to RAF Norfolk, just outside London, or RAF Brize Norton, which is slightly further away in the home counties. Once it's in London, then there will be all the state mourning that you would expect for the Queen's funeral, and gun salutes and flags at half-mast, and Parliament goes into adjournment, I think, across all of the devolved parliaments and the national parliament in Westminster. So MPs won't sit for 10 days or so. So this is a big national process that has to happen over the following days, and it's all been written down, it's all been planned for years.
So, Rory, as the Union Jack flies at half-mast over Buckingham Palace, a little earlier over Downing Street, the flag, the Union Jack, was also brought down to half-mast. We're expecting the UK Prime Minister, Liz Truss, someone who the Queen only anointed 2 days ago on Tuesday. We saw that picture of the Queen with her. And so she's due to speak shortly, and we'll cross to that just as soon as we can. Let's bring in now Shola Moss-Shogbamimu, who is a political and women's advocate and author of This Is Why I Resist, and she joins us now from London. Shola, just so first of all, just give us your reaction to what we've just been hearing.
Well, the news that's come through that the Queen has passed away, my first thought is with her family, her loved ones. I empathize with the Queen's loved ones who have lost today their mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, and to all for whom she was Lilibet. She was not just Queen. She was not just the duty that we have all seen in the last 7 decades. She was like every one of us, I imagine, mother, sister, and a friend. So to all our loved ones, I empathize, and I share my condolences, and especially to our nation, which has lost its longest reigning monarch today. So today is a day of reflection. It's a day of people being able to consider her life, her sense of duty, and even those that have challenged the monarchy like myself. I think we can all respect today her passing and her sense of duty.
Yeah, and Shola, I suppose that sense of duty is really the thing, isn't it? And we saw it all the way to the end, even just 2 days ago, as she brought in the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss.
That is true, and I think many people would have seen the images of her, which would have been the first for a lot of people. Because when I saw her looking quite frail, which is not surprising because she's 96, but if anything, I think that it brings home the fact that she's getting older, she's aged, and yes, she came out to welcome the new Prime Minister to continue the process to ensure that the legitimacy of the new Prime Minister in being received by the Queen was established. So I think a lot of people will be bearing that in mind today.
Can you give us an idea of, for those who don't live in Britain and aren't just aware of just how fond many people are? There are those, as our correspondent reported a little bit earlier, those who are ardently fervently against the monarchy. But generally speaking, she's a very popular figure. Why is that? Why does she engender this love?
Well, let me say that, look, for a lot of us, we grew up with Queen Elizabeth II as the only monarch that we've known of the United Kingdom, right? And I think a lot of people have related to her in that respect. People from the older generation and some people from the younger generation. But like your correspondent mentioned, there are people who have raised objections or challenged decisions and things that the monarchy has done to date, and I'm one of them. So I'm not going to hide that fact. But I think that those who love the Queen, those who've raised objections about the monarchy as an institution, I think everyone will come together today with respect and in respect that 70 years of service is something to be respected. And even if there are aspects of that service we may not have agreed with or we may have raised objections with, this is somebody who has served her country the way her country wanted her to serve, and who has, in the last 70 years, been seen as the head of state and be seen as, as a leader by many in this country. Now, aside from that, I would say that for many people who see the Queen, they probably also see her as, they would see a grandmother or a great-grandmother. And even amidst a lot of the issues that may have arisen over the last few years, whether it was over Princess Diana and then recent things that have happened with members of her family, people have dividing views on different things. But I think right now, especially on this day, people out of respect will pay their respects to her. This is something that everyone would go, she's served her country, and now she's moving on to the next chapter.
Shola, just stay there just for a second, because we're going to come back to you in just a second. And I just want to say it's coming up to 1800 GMT. And we bring you the news that Queen Elizabeth II, the UK's longest-serving monarch, has died at Balmoral Castle, aged 96, after reigning for 70 years. Her family rushed up to Balmoral, and when news was released just around lunchtime UK time that she was gravely ill and concerns have been growing about her health. The Queen, of course, came to the throne back in 1952 and witnessed enormous social change. There was a statement issued by Buckingham Palace saying the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and Queen Consort will remain there this evening, will return to London tomorrow. Let's cross to Balmoral Castle. In Scotland, Rob Matheson is there. He's on the phone.
This is 93.7 Citizen FM, Abuja.
If you check the time, you can notice it's 7 o'clock. Don't stand attention for the Google.
For news on the hour.
About things really up around the world, especially for Wiobodo Nigeria. We want call to drop for the more to this better evening on top Citizen 93.7 FM Abuja. The first one we'll open the curtain. Shortly, we're not going to waste time. The Queen Elizabeth II, we just they get the info, say she died today at the age 96 for inside of her house, for inside of Balmoral Castle, as the matter take the B. Information just the drop, and as it drop, we myself for carry and rush can drop for the mouth this gangantious evening on top of the matter. And still, federal government don't come outside and talk or say they collaborate with security body to make sure, say, school security them, say everything go gallant on top of the one when we say school go open during by the time of September 12. Our guy sit down on top book matter with the Minister of State for Education, good luck up here, and come outside and talk this one, they give new to people on top of the one when we say they don't they prepare for inside of school as the matter take be. And your state governor Sheyi Makinde don't come outside and don't become the new chairman of the PDP Governors Forum as the matter take be. Governor Makinde now come outside as the new chairman. He never too tell what he said before chairman will be governor of Sokoto State. Governor Aminu Tambuwal being come outside the right to say he don't come up, but he no do again as chairman. And on top of Obodo Ibo matter, still we go still remember for you, say Queen Elizabeth II, she myself don't buy today for inside of her house for Balmoral Castle at the age of 96. And according to how the TikTok, they say she died peaceful death, nothing stress her as the matter take be. You go remember, say the last time when she carry waka visit Nigeria, na inside of 1956, when she carry waka come visit for inside of the country. All the things and things is very up around the world, especially for Nigeria. And we don't cut up our drop for the most this better evening. Before me go come up, but sharply make I remember for you, say that rice way day on the pot today, fit day on top of cooler tomorrow. The name where my mama and my papa, two of them collabo give me Nachukwe Buka Eze, make I get a better evening.
I think that they will all be paying their respects. Just like I've said now, I don't think that I think that the relationship many of these countries have and had with Queen Elizabeth, of course, stemmed from the period of time that Britain colonized these countries. And Queen Elizabeth at the time was head of state, she as head of Britain. And at the time that many of these countries, or all of these countries, got their independence, a number of them still made her their head of state. And we've seen that in recent months. Some of the Caribbean nations chose to elect to remove her as head of state. Nevertheless, I don't think that there would be anyone per se in these Commonwealth countries that would not express respect at this time at her passing. And I think that would be, I think that is what we will see.
All right, Shola, thanks very much indeed for that. Thanks for joining us and giving us your perspective. Shola Mos Shogbamimu, political and women's advocate and author of This Is Why I Resist. Just while we stay on these pictures, and we're getting lots of messages of condolences coming into us here. The Prince Charles, or now King Charles, is saying, I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. He said, we mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. We've also heard from all sorts of people. We're hearing from the Ukrainian president, Volodymyr Zelensky, who's extending his condolences to Britain and the Commonwealth for this irreparable loss of Queen Elizabeth II. The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, As she had done before, she reminded us of a deep truth about ourselves. We are a people of hope who care for one another. The Canadian President Justin Trudeau pays tribute to the Queen as an important part of Canada's history. So lots of tributes coming in from right around the world. Another one from former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who said that Queen Elizabeth served the country to the last, as he offered his condolences to the royal family following the death of 96-year-old Queen Elizabeth II on Thursday. The United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, and the entire world are joined together in mourning this evening, Gordon Brown said in a tweet. Let's bring in Ed Owens. He's a royal historian, joins us now from Paris. And Ed, it's the news that nobody ever thought would happen, really, if you live in Britain. This woman who's always been a part of the fabric of British life.
Yes, and yet at the same time, we have known for a while now that the Queen's health was fading. Only last November, she was unable to be present for the Remembrance Sunday service. And really this was a strong indication that her health was not good. The previous month, she had visited hospital. At the time, the palace did not disclose exactly what was wrong with her. And then earlier this year, we've, of course, had the state
opening. We'll be right
opening.
back with you in a second. We just want to go to 10 Downing Street. Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, is speaking.
By the news that we have just heard from Balmoral. The death of Her Majesty the Queen is a huge shock to the nation and to the world. Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her. She ascended the throne just after the Second World War. She championed the development of the Commonwealth from a small group of 7 countries to a family of 56 nations, spanning every continent of the world. We are now a modern, thriving, dynamic nation. Through thick and thin, Queen Elizabeth II provided us with the stability and the strength that we needed. She was the very spirit of Great Britain, and that spirit will endure. She has been our longest ever reigning monarch. It's an extraordinary achievement to have presided with such dignity and grace for 70 years. Her life of service stretched beyond most of our living memories. In return, she was loved and admired by the people in the United Kingdom and all around the world. She has been a personal inspiration to me and to many Britons. Her devotion to duty is an example to us all. Earlier this week, at 96, she remained determined to carry out her duties as she appointed me as her 15th Prime Minister. Throughout her life, she's visited more than 100 countries, and she has touched the lives of millions around the world. In the difficult days ahead, we will come together with our friends across the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, and the world to celebrate her extraordinary lifetime of service. It is a day of great loss, but Queen Elizabeth II leaves a great legacy. Today, the crown passes, as it has done for more than 1,000 years, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty, King Charles III. With the King's family, we mourn the loss of his mother, and as we mourn, we must come together as a people to support him, to help him bear the awesome responsibility that he now carries for us all. We offer him our loyalty and devotion, just as his mother devoted so much to so many for so long. And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
That is Britain's new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, talking of the passing of the Elizabethan age, saying this was a huge shock to the nation, huge shock to the world. Through thick and thin, Liz Truss said, Queen Elizabeth embodied the very spirit of Britain. She touched the lives of millions. It's a day of great loss, but Queen Elizabeth II left a great legacy. Let's return to Ed Owens. We were speaking to him just a short while ago, royal historian. Ed joins us now from Paris. Ed, extraordinary to think that Britain's new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, just 2 days ago, there she was with the Queen at Balmoral.
It is extraordinary, and I think many people will be watching the new Prime Minister making this speech, commemorating the figure of Elizabeth II, and it's almost hard to believe that this figure is our new Prime Minister, given that she's been in the job so little time. But nevertheless, meaningful words, I think, that summed up this epoch, which we now describe as the second Elizabethan age, the significant amount of change that has taken place over 70 years. Britain and the Commonwealth are very different compared to 1952. And I think that when we as historians come to look back at the reign of Elizabeth II, we will be very interested to see just what kind of sort of social, economic, cultural, political developments took place through this period, and how the monarchy, and specifically the monarch, lent this period a sense of continuity, and I would suggest stability as well.
As Liz Truss said, the crown now passes on to her eldest son, who is now King Charles III. Do you think this will be a moment, a new time, a new era for the monarchy?
Yes and no. I began an answer earlier on when talking to you regarding how we have actually seen Prince Charles being prepared for this moment. Not just over the last year, when he's filled in for his mother on a number of significant occasions, most notably the state opening of Parliament earlier this year, but also this stretches back almost a decade, in that he has become a more present figure in our national life, and that's been very deliberate. It has been in order to, if you like, ease this moment of transition, so that we are more accustomed to seeing him in a leading role. And I have a feeling that, given that he is now this grieving monarch, the British public, despite what have at times been a certain sense of disapproval, certain controversy that is attached to Charles, certainly whilst he was Prince of Wales, I think there will be a sentimental rallying around him in this moment of grief that is personal, but is also national.
Indeed. That's ahead, of course. Let's just take a moment to look back. The British Prime Minister talked of the great legacy that Queen Elizabeth leaves behind, something that you've alluded to, this passing of the Elizabethan age. Just how much did she bring to the monarchy, and how important a figure is she in Britain, and especially as it's kind of representative around the world?
Well, I'll take your first question, if I may, first. And I think in terms of what she did for the monarchy, she really re-energized and reinvigorated the monarchy following the reign of her father, George VI, who wasn't a particularly popular man. His reign really was overshadowed by the circumstances to which he came to the throne, because, of course, his older brother, Edward VIII, abdicated. And that abdication really, it overshadowed much of George VI's reign. And he wasn't seen as a very romantic or charismatic figure. When Elizabeth II came to the throne, she was a young woman in her mid-20s, a young mother, and she seemed to embody a certain sense of optimism, a sense of renewal, that Britain was moving past the bad old days of the Second World War and was moving from, as I say, a reign of not a very popular king into a new reign where you had this sort of idyllic domestic group in Elizabeth, Philip, and their then two young children. And there was a lot of hope and optimism about what this new youthful family represented for Britain. And just to move to your second point, you asked, what does she mean to the world? Well, she is an iconic figure. She was this iconic figure, and I think she will remain an iconic figure because arguably she is the best known public figure in all of the world. Her face we see on our banknotes, on our postage stamps, but beyond British shores, it is also the case that she has this kind of global standing, a global celebrity. And because of her Commonwealth role, as head of the Commonwealth, she was widely celebrated for her role in holding that organization together too. So I think there is this global dimension to the monarchy, which often we lose sight of back in Britain.
And that sense of duty we saw being displayed almost to her dying day.
The emphasis throughout Elizabeth II's reign has been on duty and public service. And let's just take a moment to think about why the language of duty and public service matters so much. It's specifically because back in 1936, Edward VIII, her uncle, put private desire and self-fulfillment ahead of public duty and service. And therefore, she sought to embody the kind of monarchy that her uncle had failed to embody. And that notion of service, of duty, has really appealed, I think, both to the British public and to a Commonwealth public. This idea that this individual put public service and the welfare of others ahead of her own personal desire. I think that explains some of the strong, affectionate emotion that people have had for Elizabeth II over the last 70 years. And you're absolutely right to go back to the start of our conversation. You know, she only greeted a new Prime Minister this week, I think demonstrating a dutiful role, that dutiful nature, right through to the very end.
Ed, we'll leave it there. Thanks very much indeed for your perspective and analysis. Good to have you with us at this time.
Thank you.
Just to recap, Queen Elizabeth II, the UK's longest-serving monarch, has died at Balmoral Castle in Scotland, aged 96. She reigned for 70 years. Her family gathered around her at the Scottish estate after concerns grew earlier on Thursday. Queen Elizabeth came to the throne in 1952, witnessed enormous social change, as we've been talking about. And with her death, her eldest son, Charles, the former Prince of Wales, will now become king. Buckingham Palace earlier issued a statement saying that the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen consort will remain at Balmoral this evening, and they will return to London tomorrow. So you will see King Charles and his consort Camilla coming to London tomorrow. Let's try and reconnect with Rob Matheson, our correspondent, who's live outside Balmoral Castle in Scotland, where the Queen died earlier today. So, Rob, I hope you can hear us all right. Just tell us more about what you're seeing around you and what the feeling's like.
Well, people have been gathering for lunchtime. Announced that.
Yeah, no, sorry, we've lost Rob again. It's real issues with connecting with his phone at Balmoral. I can imagine all the people using mobile phones out there just connecting around the world, telling the world the news that Queen Elizabeth has died. Well, Queen Elizabeth II came to the throne on the death of her father in 1952 and became the longest reigning monarch in British history. In a little while, we'll take a look back at her long life. And just to say that once, it was around about 12:20 today, British time.
Historic handshake with former IRA commander Martin McGuinness, a public symbol of peace following decades of conflict in Northern Ireland. There was, nonetheless, a very private side to this wife, mother and grandmother. Stiff upper-lipped in public and so guarded there's little footage to show the sense of humour she's reputed to have displayed behind closed doors. On occasion, she did open up. With uncharacteristic candour and emotion, the Queen herself marked 1992 as a very bad year.
It has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
Punctuated by several family splits and a fire at her beloved Windsor Castle. 3 of her 4 children would divorce, Charles most famously, and then that crash.
We are just getting word that the French government has informed all of us that Princess Diana has died.
The royal family's restrained response collided with a British public convulsing in heartache. Elizabeth learned a tough lesson through all of the grief. She wasn't merely a mother or a grandmother, rather a queen to a people, no matter what. An enduring image, the Queen bowing her head to Princess Diana's coffin, marking a sad period for the royal family, Britain, and its relationship with the monarchy. Over more than a decade, however, public faith in the royal family did rebuild. The Queen was visibly thrilled by the show of support for the royal wedding between her grandson William and partner Kate in 2011. Then, the following year, polls showed the British royal family at the height of their popularity as the Queen celebrated 60 years on the throne. She used her Diamond Jubilee to present a slimmed-down monarchy. Only the key royals paraded and waved, a sign of a more economic family for the 21st century. In later years, the Queen welcomed several additions to the family, including Prince George, her first great-grandson and future heir to the throne, born in 2013 to the then Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. Reflecting the modern age, Prince Harry later married Meghan Markle, the royal family extending again to embrace an actress with African-American ancestry, in time welcoming baby Archie. Prince Philip retired from public duties in 2017. Meanwhile, the Queen continued indefatigable. She gradually slowed her busy schedule, certainly in terms of travel, but in September 2015, whilst opening a new railway in Scotland, without ceremony or commemorative fireworks, Queen Elizabeth II passed her revered predecessor, Victoria, to become Britain's longest reigning monarch. Controversy visited the family again in 2019 as the Queen's second son, Prince Andrew, gave an ill-advised interview to the BBC amid allegations of sexual misconduct.
I let the side down.
Any hopes for a quieter year ahead were dashed when Harry and Meghan, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, made a shock announcement at the start of 2020.
This is the last time they'll be walking into the Abbey.
Giving up their public roles and duties, they moved to North America with a mission to become financially independent. Crisis talks and another contentious interview soon followed. In 2021, at the age of 99, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, passed away. Senior royals attended the funeral, scaled back due to coronavirus, to celebrate his 7 decades of service and mourn the passing of a devoted husband, father, grandfather and great-grandfather.
We therefore pray.
Elizabeth stood alone as she watched his coffin lower into the royal vault in Windsor, bidding farewell to her husband of 73 years, the man she described as her strength and stay. She will be remembered as one of the great monarchs, able to hand a strengthened crown to her heir, despite reigning over a period of tumultuous change.
I know. What are you trying to get to? It's okay.
My wife.
I have Matt on.
Oh, great. Thank you. Today, the crown passes, as the Prime Minister says, as it has done for more than 1,000 years, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty King Charles III. And as Christian says, life goes on. Prince William now becomes the Duke of Cornwall and Cambridge. Kate is the Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge. And they will, as tradition dictates, become the Prince and Princess of Wales. The King will bestow those titles, I'm sure. But we now look ahead, Christian, to a state funeral, unlike anything I think we've seen before, certainly not in the media age.
Well, exactly. I mean, you look back at some of the great funerals that have happened in this country during her reign. First, obviously, Winston Churchill's was a huge affair, and I covered the funeral of her mother, Queen Elizabeth, the widow of King George V, and that was a huge affair. But this is bound to be much bigger, and as you said, her body will lie in state for a period of time for people to view. And this country and this city, you can be sure, you know, they're already putting up the barricades along the Mall and along, you know, the famous routes that royal, you know, corteges take. There will be a huge turnout for that and for all the steps.
I think they're planning on queues for miles going into Westminster Hall.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And when you look at these pictures in the obituary that you made so well, you know, you just, you have to say, wow, what about those outfits? I'm sorry to sound, you know, sort of trivial, but that also defined her. The hat, the gloves, the coat, everything matched perfectly, and often with certain messages for whatever occasion she was at. So remember, and I'm leading to one of her great recent meetings in green, the colour of Ireland, with Martin McGuinness, a former IRA member who was devoted to blowing up the monarchy and in fact is considered to have had part in the death of her beloved uncle, Lord Mountbatten, who was the last Governor General of India before independence. In any event, he was assassinated, and all those years later, as you saw in those pictures, Queen Elizabeth stepped along with history and was able to shake his hand. And shake his hand. And actually, there was a little bit of fondness between them. Martin McGuinness talked about it too before he died.
And we've just had a heartfelt message of condolence as well from the leader of Sinn Féin. But I think what Christiane says is an important point. When we think back to her outfits, today we keep speaking about her as the 96-year-old
I'm sorry, I have to Bianca, I just have to interrupt. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau of Canada is speaking, so I just want to go there.
In the world, and I will miss her so. C'est avec une grande tristesse que nous apprenons aujourd'hui du décès.
Prime Minister Trudeau speaking about his feelings, clearly emotional at the news, the death of Queen Elizabeth II here in New York with Zain Asher. And Zain, I'm wondering Julia Chatterley as well, I'm sorry, I had a brain freeze there for a moment. There is so much now that is regimented that will take place over the next several days, but for this funeral, the exact date for it has not been set, but the plans have already been made. I mean, this is sort of already planned out. Every detail, all the details we've been seeing just over the last hour or so, those were all planned out.
It's, Christiane and Max were saying the blueprint for this is enormous. It can be tweaked with, and I'm sure has been tweaked with over the past weeks and months as well. I think the way that we tend to talk about this is nothing's confirmed until it's officially confirmed. So while we have loose guidelines, and I know Max said and Bianca was saying they're around perhaps 10 days for the funeral, nothing at this stage, despite all the pre-planning that goes into place and the operational names that they have for this, is concrete yet. So it's just a case of feeling our way. I think some of the very important questions are what happens with the government, with Parliament, because the country does go into a period of mourning, and things do grind to a halt.
You were pointing out to me something which I hadn't considered with the currency changes.
Well, national anthem, police uniforms, passports, eventually all of that will have to change.
These are the longer term things, and the point is, again, we grew up with currency, the pound notes, the currency, the coin currency as well, all has Queen Elizabeth's face
so
on
it always has to have the reigning monarch on it?
Absolutely. So these are long-term things, but I think in the shorter term,
those changes will, begin.
In the shorter term, we go into a period now of mourning where various protocols are and do come into play, but there are other things in the country that are very important at this moment too, and not only to mention that we've only had the current Prime Minister for just a couple of days, and so big decisions have to be made, and perhaps won't be.
And just talk about the emotion of this moment. You know, we always knew that this day would come. Let's be candid about this. She was 96 years old. She had a series of health emergencies, but that doesn't make it any less distressing. And that's the thing about grief. You know, no matter how prepared you think you are, it always does seem to come as a surprise. I'm personally, as somebody who was born and raised in the UK, I'm in shock right now. Queen Elizabeth famously declared, as you remember, Julia, 1992 as her annus horribilis. But I think for a lot of people who admire the royal family, for a lot of royalists, for a lot of people who admire the Queen, this is really the annus horribilis. And I think that many people have feared. My mind does go to the new king right now. A lot of people are talking about the fact that, gosh, can you imagine grieving your mother, mourning the death of your mother, and then almost immediately having to contend with the pressures of absorbing the responsibilities of arguably the most important role in the world. People say, yes, you know, but he's prepared for this. He's been preparing for this his entire life. Yes and no. Of course, he's lived his entire life in front of a long lens camera. We understand that, but nothing can prepare you for what is about to happen. He has not just lost his mother, but he is presiding over the dawn of a completely new era in Great Britain.
Yeah. I think many would say, though, that Prince Charles, the personal side, has been ready for many years and prepared for this moment, and that's part of the process of being royal and the preparation in place. But I do think, and I think your point is a very accurate one, that for now at least, this period is about mourning. It's about a family. Whether you like the monarchy or not, I think most people have a view on this Queen, and they have a view on what she represents to the nation. And for all the change to come, she's a piece of a part of our lives, whether in your heart or otherwise, that I don't think anybody else that follows has.
We were talking before off camera about sort of a sense of humor that she had, or willingness to kind of play along.
Has passed on at the age of 96. This was released in a statement as announced by Buckingham Palace. The Queen died peacefully at the Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen concert will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Queen Elizabeth II was the longest reigning monarch in British history and the world's oldest head of state. On her death, the Queen's eldest son and her heir, Charles, the former Prince of Wales, has become the King of the United Kingdom and 14 Commonwealth realms. According to an official statement from Buckingham Palace, which reads a statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death, it says, "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all the members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection of which the Queen was so widely held." The statement from Buckingham Palace read with the title, "A Statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death." Released on Thursday, the 8th of September 2022. Citizen FM 93.7 is following the story, and we will bring you more details as it unfolds. Do stay with Citizen FM 93.7.
Queen's death from the British people from around the world. CNN's coverage continues right after this.
African Voices Changemakers. Create opportunities. Impact communities.
93.7 Citizen FM.
This is our journey. We've had our finest moments and our darkest hours. Yet we pull ourselves back from the brink every time. We are a resilient people. We are Nigeria. And when we talk, we share our views on Top Radio 93.7 Citizen FM. A people united will never.
Citizen FM 93.7. Here is a breaking news. The Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, has passed on at the age of 96. This was released in a statement as announced by Buckingham Palace. The Queen died peacefully at the Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen concert will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Queen Elizabeth II was the longest reigning monarch in British history and the world's oldest head of state. On her death, the Queen's eldest son and her heir, Charles, the former Prince of Wales, has become the King of the United Kingdom and 14 Commonwealth realms. According to an official statement from Buckingham Palace, which reads a statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death, it says, "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all the members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection of which the Queen was so widely held." The statement from Buckingham Palace read with the title, "A Statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death," released on Thursday, the 8th of September 2022. Citizen FM 93.7 is following the story, and we will bring you more details as it unfolds. Do stay with Citizen FM 93.7.
Citizen FM 93.7. Citizen FM.
This is our journey. We have had our finest moments and our darkest hours. Yet we pull ourselves back from the brink every time. We are a resilient people. We are Nigeria. And when we talk, we share our views on Talk Radio 93.7, Citizen FM. A people united will never be defeated.
Citizen FM.
This is our journey. We have had our finest moments and our darkest hours. Yet we pull ourselves back from the brink every time. We are a resilient people. We are Nigeria. And when we talk, we share our views on Talk Radio 93.7, Citizen FM. A people united will never be defeated.
Of our dream. Citizen FM, Citizen FM. Your problem is my problem and my joy is your joy. Citizen FM, Citizen FM. Make we join our hearts to build a nation of our dream. Citizen FM, Citizen FM. Yeah. Your problem is my problem and my joy is your joy. Citizen FM, Citizen FM. Citizen FM, Citizen FM. Citizen FM.
And it's not just that, you know, he might want to model himself on his mother. That is the constitutional prerogative that he has to actually abide by. And now everything he says, as you say, will be, you know, picked up for any kind of nuance. And it will be interesting to see, Max, because actually, as people have said, then Prince Charles was actually ahead of the curve. He was on many issues. I mean, he tried to put his hand into urban planning and architecture. That didn't go down very well. But he was the first major royal, but also major public figure to go into organic, whether it was food, gardening, agriculture. He had his own home at Highgrove, which was and does still, which was a sort of exemplar of how to be organic, and people, thought that was a little bit weird way back then, tree huggers and all the rest of it. But of course, he was ahead of the curve on that. And, furthermore, on the environment and philosophy and how he talks about, young people and the like. But yes, you're right. This is not a young man coming to the throne. This is not an unknown. This is somebody who the British people and the world know very, very well. He's in his early 70s, for heaven's sake. He's waited all this time to become king. He's been a dutiful son, a dutiful heir in the system that we inhabit in this country, and now we're going to see what he can do as king at a time when you've predicted and others have predicted that the monarchy will be more and more questioned, the institution will become more and more questioned here.
Max, Christian, I want to go to CNN correspondent Scott McLean, who's outside Windsor Castle, has been throughout the day. Scott, I know you've been talking to people. What reactions are you hearing now?
Hey, Anderson, it's a pretty remarkable scene. I just want to show you quickly. They're actually just trying to clear people out because of the volume of people who have come to lay flowers, and you can see just how many there are here. And I have to tell you, just when the news started to spread outside of the castle, it was an incredible scene. Of course, the flag was lowered to half staff, and then a rainbow appeared from right behind it. It was an unbelievable scene. I wouldn't have believed it had I not seen it with my own eyes. And then people have been coming just to lay flowers. They're actually just trying to move the crowd back right now to the statue at the edge of the road. But I spoke to this woman earlier, Michelle, and it was just a couple months ago that you actually got to see the Queen in person for the opening of a hospice.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, amazing. She was in great. We didn't know it was going to be her. We were told it was a VIP celebrity, but I just kind of knew it would be her because it's something special to her, and I just had a feeling. So I was like, right, I've definitely got to be there.
So what was the interaction like?
So she kind of got out the car, sort of not far from us at all. We were allowed to stand right by the door, and everyone. There wasn't many of us at all, so it was like quite exciting. And then she got out. She just kind of really it was like seeing your nan, or something. She just kind of went like this to everybody, and she just looked in great health. She was with Anne, who kind of let her lead the way, and we all hip hurrayed her, which she kind of gave us a little side glance and a little smirk. And then she went in to do the unveiling. And then when she came out, she gave everyone a wave, and she kind of walked past and was like, thank you, because everyone was telling her she looked amazing.
What does the Queen mean to you as an English person, as a British person?
Oh, she just symbolises everything. I'm such a big royalist. I lived in Windsor all my life, so just grown up with my family loving her and kind of instilling that on us, really. So any event, we like to be there. We've had the Jubilee here, which has just been amazing. She just symbolises kind of Windsor and England as a whole.
You think she's a unifying force for this country?
Absolutely, absolutely. She is going to be missing everything. Charles will be amazing king, but she will always be at the forefront of everyone's minds. We've never known anything different here. I think most people who are still alive have only ever known her to rule the country.
Yeah, it's lovely to meet you, and sorry for the loss for you and for your country. Anderson, if I can, I'll just sort of walk through the crowd a little bit here, and sorry, Michelle, and kind of show you just how many people are starting to show up here just to pay their respects. As I said, they're trying to put up barricades at the moment just to try to kind of keep people at a reasonable distance, just because of the volume of people who have shown up. And so people are carrying flowers. Here's one man here. Excuse me, ma'am, you're live on CNN. Just wondering how you're feeling at this moment.
It's obviously a sad day for the nation. We've only just sort of found out in the last hour or two. She was obviously getting old anyway, and her health was deteriorating. But it can't prepare you, obviously, for the moment that the news breaks out. So, obviously, I think everyone here is here for the same reasons.
What does the Queen mean to you two as British people?
Well, she's everything we've always known. I've never known any different. She is head of state. She's, people in the armed forces have served with her. For her. She's brought the country through some real tough times. She served herself during the war, you know, and she's everything that's British, so obviously. So it's a difficult moment for everyone that's connected.
Did you ever think you'd be so sad about the death of a person that I presume you've never met?
Well, I've actually met her 3 times. I had the privilege. Yeah, she was a lovely lady. My granddad met her. It's. I think she was getting old. Everyone knew she was becoming frail. Everyone sort of was mentally deep in their mind with mentally preparing for this moment. But when it actually comes, the shock's always there.
Sorry for your loss. Thank you for talking to us. I'll just sort of wander down, if we can, Anderson, and again, you can see just how many people are here. And I've been asking people, what they've thought of the idea of a King Charles, and most of the people that we've spoken to say that, look, they haven't even wrapped their head around this possibility before. Of course, Prince Charles not necessarily as popular as the Queen, not necessarily even as popular as Prince William if you consult the polls, but people really focus at this moment on just what an incredible life and certainly an incredible legacy as well.
Yeah, I love that the 2 people who you kind of randomly talked to both had very personal experiences and felt very personally toward her, and also had actually met her, which is extraordinary. That gentleman having met her 3 times. I love the Michelle saying that it was like seeing her nan show up, waving with the Queen, waving. Scott, we'll check in with you.
This is our journey. We've had our finest moments and our darkest hours. Yet we pull ourselves back from the brink every time. We are a resilient people. We are Nigeria. And when we talk, we share our views on Talk Radio 93.7, Citizen FM. A people united will never be defeated.
Of our dream. Citizen FM, Citizen FM. Your problem is my problem and my joy is your joy. Citizen FM, Citizen FM. Make we join our hearts to build a nation of our dream. Citizen FM, Citizen FM. Yeah. Your problem is my problem and my joy is your joy. Citizen FM, Citizen FM.
Citizen FM 93.7. Here is a breaking news. The Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, has passed on at the age of 96. This was released in a statement as announced by Buckingham Palace. The Queen died peacefully at the Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen concert will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Queen Elizabeth II was the longest reigning monarch in British history and the world's oldest head of state. On her death, the Queen's eldest son and her heir, Charles, the former Prince of Wales, has become the King of the United Kingdom and 14 Commonwealth realms. According to an official statement from Buckingham Palace, which reads a statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death, it says, "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all the members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection of which the Queen was so widely held." The statement from Buckingham Palace read with the title, "A Statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death." Released on Thursday, the 8th of September 2022. Citizen FM 93.7 is following the story. And And we will bring you more details as it unfolds. Do stay with Citizen FM 93.7. Citizen FM 93.7. Here is a breaking news. The Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, has passed on at the age of 96. This was released in a statement as announced by Buckingham Palace. The Queen died peacefully at the Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen concert will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Queen Elizabeth II was the longest reigning monarch in British history and the world's oldest head of state. On her death, the Queen's eldest son and her heir, Charles, the former Prince of Wales, has become the King of the United Kingdom and 14 Commonwealth realms. According to an official statement from Buckingham Palace, which reads a statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death, it says, "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all the members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection of which the Queen was so widely held." The statement from Buckingham Palace read with the title, "A Statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death." Released on Thursday, the 8th of September 2022. Citizen FM 93.7 is following the story and we will bring you more details as it unfolds. Do stay with Citizen FM 93.7.
What's interesting, though, we're talking about what's happening going forward, and I couldn't agree more. There will be a period of just the family in grief. And I know on my show that I do on a Saturday, I'm actually going to be talking to Julia Samuel, who was great friends, very close friends with Princess Diana, is the godmother, one of the godmothers to Prince George. And one of her areas is grief. It's believed she worked with the princes, and I think we're going to see a lot of that, not just amongst the royals, but remember, there's huge households. There are people who worked with her for years and years and years and years, so they'll all be going through the same thing. It's interesting that I think the last thing that Prince Charles would have done as Prince Charles, because he is now King Charles, was to guest edit the Voice newspaper. It's Britain's black newspaper. It came up for its 40th anniversary. And that was really, really welcomed amongst black people in the UK. So already there are lots and lots of things Charles done with the Prince's Trust and what have you that has been fostering a lot of goodwill amongst the young people. And I think that's important going on into the future, to capture the hearts and minds of young people, because as you said, there are countries like Australia. I've just been contacted by Australians waking up to this news, and what does it mean for Australia? As you know, Anthony Albanese, the new Prime Minister there, has been fairly open in admitting he's a Republican. So so appealing to the youth and generations coming up is going to be vital for the monarchy to continue. But as I said before, this is about grief first and foremost, and the future is something that, you know, that is inevitable. Obviously, that's happening. Yeah. But Prince Charles does look to the future, has been looking to the future for quite some time.
Yeah, Kate Williams, your thoughts as about what lies ahead, just really in the next week or 10 days. We don't have exactly funeral plans yet, the exact date, but in past it's been about a 10-day time period.
Yeah, it's about a 10-day time period, and it will be a state funeral. It'll be a ceremonial funeral. There'll be heads of state coming in from all over the world. It will be the most significant royal event since her actual coronation. This is such an important seismic moment. We will expect the Queen to come to London in the royal train, the train that Queen Victoria loves so much, the train that the Queen has loved so much. She's in her beloved home Balmoral that was always most loved to her. And then we expect that there may be a lying in state, as there was with the Queen Mother. And really, I think that we're seeing at the moment, I've been sent some films, because I'm in CNN Bureau, but I've been sent some films from St James's Park. People are queuing up to get to Buckingham Palace. They aren't speaking, they're completely somber. There is really a nation
overwhelmed by grief. And isn't it significant, Anderson, to think that yesterday, her last day on the planet, was the day in which she devoted herself to duty. She saw her prime ministers. Most of us would have felt, you know, she could have deputised that job, you know, Charles could have done it, but she was determined to do it. And that, I think, what duty?
Stay right here for the latest on the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Jake Tapper is going to pick up our coverage after a short break.
Citizen FM 93.7. Here is a breaking news. The Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth II, has passed on at the age of 96. This was released in a statement as announced by Buckingham Palace. The Queen died peacefully at the Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen concert will remain at Balmoral this evening and will return to London tomorrow. Queen Elizabeth II was the longest reigning monarch in British history and the world's oldest head of state. On her death, the Queen's eldest son and her heir, Charles, the former Prince of Wales, has become the King of the United Kingdom and 14 Commonwealth realms. According to an official statement from Buckingham Palace, which reads a statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death, it says, "The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all the members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world. During this period of mourning and change, my family and I will be comforted and sustained by our knowledge of the respect and deep affection of which the Queen was so widely held." The statement from Buckingham Palace read with the title, "A Statement from His Majesty the King at the time of the Queen's death." Released on Thursday, the 8th of September 2022. Citizen FM 93.7 is following the story and we will bring you more details as it unfolds. Do stay with Citizen FM 93.7.
The time is 8 o'clock. President Muhammadu Buhari rallies support for military.
This is our journey. We've had our finest moments and our darkest hours. Yet we pull ourselves back from the brink every time. We are a resilient people. We are Nigeria. And when we talk, we share our views on Talk Radio 93.7, Citizen FM. A people united will never be defeated.